Okay, so starting off today's show, I actually wanted to talk a little bit of NBA with you guys. And I've gotten the Michael Jordan bug over the last couple months. I mean, can you really blame me? With the Last Dance documentary coming out, I was not someone that witnessed all of these Michael Jordan epic games. So during this quarantine with no sports, I've been really doing my best besides the Last Dance, watching old games of the Chicago Bulls during their championship run. And I've really been trying to learn a little bit more about Michael Jordan and what exactly made his career so good. And I just wanted to say before I start off today's segment, I'm 20 years old and I didn't witness the Jordan years, so The Last Dance and all of the other previous research I've done was really one of my first viewing experiences witnessing what exactly Michael Jordan was like, what kind of player he was. And for me, the one thing that was really evident throughout the whole documentary and throughout all of the research and information I gathered was Jordan's competitiveness and how his competitiveness and his will to win and to be the best really drove him to unbelievable heights. And back when he came into the league, the thought was, if you're going to be the best ever, you need to be a big man and you need to be someone that is 6'10 or over. In fact, when he was drafted, Rob Thorne, who was actually the general manager of the Chicago Bulls at the time, said, "We wish we had a 7-footer. We wish Michael Jordan was 7 feet tall, but he's not." So this was the next big thing. And the Chicago Bulls didn't even have the number 1 pick. I feel like if they did, anyone that would have had that number 1 overall pick in that draft would have taken Hakeem Olajuwon just like the Houston Rockets did. And so I'm bringing this up because it's my way of getting into something that right now is probably the biggest story in the NBA today with the coronavirus going on. Obviously, it's cool that the league should be back sooner rather than later at the around the mid-July mark. And that is Kevin Durant's decision not to play for the NBA Return to Play tournament. And he's not going to take part in the Orlando experiment and doesn't want to play. So much of the way I'm analyzing and evaluating athletes right now, and even more specifically NBA players, right, is really based on The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary, and learning about Michael Jordan throughout his entire career. And thinking about what would Michael Jordan do in a situation like this compared to what the current modern-day athlete would do? And I just wanted to see and compare how athletes' attitude kind of do change over time. And thinking about what would Michael Jordan do in situations like this, once again, And Kevin Durant after LeBron James, and maybe there's another player you feel stronger about. But I don't think anyone's going to doubt that Kevin Durant is one of the 2 or 3 best players in the past 15 years in the whole NBA. Like, he's that good. He's a former MVP winner. He's a former NBA champion. He's a Hall of Famer, no doubt. Maybe like a top 40, top 50 player ever. But we see the story that he's not cut from the same cloth as Michael Jordan. And I think it may say something about the modern day athlete, right? It says, and I do not think there's commentary here, and I'm going to give it to you what the modern day NBA player or the modern day athlete is different. Because I just refuse to believe that Michael Jordan in this situation, more than a year removed from surgery, would sit out a chance to play in a tournament and play in a playoffs like this. Now, maybe Scottie Pippen might. I think we saw that in The Last Dance, as Pippen put off an off-season surgery, and didn't want to get work done. And he didn't want to screw up his summer. But then again, Scottie Pippen was also really underpaid. He had a big problem with the Chicago Bulls management and was just an upset employee. And to be honest, rightfully so, when he was making really not a lot of money, as we saw in the Last Dance documentary. And Kevin Durant is really none of those things. Kevin Durant is a guy that signed a 4-year, $164 million contract with the Brooklyn Nets this past offseason. And so I think it could be used as another knock on Kevin Durant. I just said there's no doubt he's one of the best 15 players, one of the 2 or 3 best players in the past 15 years. And I think it can be used as a knock on Durant. And keep in mind what I just said, there's no doubt he's one of the 2 or 3 best players in the NBA within the past 15 years. And I do think there are a couple things about Kevin Durant that when his career and legacy get discussed that are working against him. Number 1, jumping on the Warriors bandwagon is one of them, and telling everyone if you can't beat them, then join them. to a much lesser extent this. Is he 100%? Probably not. He has also already tested positive for the coronavirus. I mean, he's recovered, and so maybe from that health standpoint and from a risk of catching the coronavirus standpoint, maybe he does feel differently than other NBA players that are going to Orlando to take part in this event. You know, he's got a chance to lead a team, and yeah, like, no one would pick them over the Lakers or the Clippers or the Bucks, but, like, when would that have stopped Michael Jordan? When would that have prevented Michael Jordan from competing in this? I actually looked this up, did some research before today's show. In Michael Jordan's second year in the NBA, and that was in 1987, he broke his foot in the third game of the season and missed 64 games. He then convinced the Bulls late in the season to allow him to come back and play, even though doctors said there was a chance he could re-injure his foot, do damage, and ruin his career by playing. Now, he wasn't at great risk, but he was at some risk. And because he wanted to win, and because he wanted to play so badly, he actually convinced the Chicago Bulls management and the Bulls team doctors to let him play. The Bulls then managed to make the playoffs, and that's when we kind of saw the legend of Michael Jordan in an NBA game for the first time. It was shown in The Last Dance as well in Game 2 of the playoffs that year against the Boston Celtics and Larry Bird. And keep in mind, the Celtics at the time were, just like they are today, one of the most classic and epic teams in the NBA, playing in the Boston Garden, and Chicago did lose in overtime, but Michael Jordan dropped 63 points in that game. And I feel like that was the earliest and best example of Michael Jordan's greatness. And it was to everyone that he was like announcing himself as the next best player in the league and eventually the greatest player of all time. Now, Kevin Durant is going to be, when you compare him in this situation to what Michael Jordan was, he's going to be more than a year removed from his surgery. And he is saying that he never really considered playing basketball this season, and it was best for him to wait. The exact quote was, "I don't think I'm ready to play that intense type of basketball right now in the next couple months. It gives me time to get ready for next season and the rest of my career." And Michael Jordan didn't think big picture or down the road like that. You know, you never know what is going to happen in life, and we are really learning that hard right now. You know, 4 months ago, if I were to tell you that March Madness would have been canceled and the start of the MLB season, along with the start of the NHL and NBA playoffs, and I would have told you that all of those wouldn't have gotten started yet by June, you really wouldn't have believed me for a second. And I'm also not saying that means you treat every day like it's a big time holiday and you could go out and make all these types of irresponsible decisions or something like that, but it's a departure from the way it used to be. And I thought that the Last Dance documentary really would affect today's NBA players, and that a lot of them would look in the mirror the same way Michael Jordan did and act the same way Michael Jordan did, and maybe some of them would try to channel that and look at what Jordan did in those big time situations and try to, you know, show some of those qualities and show some of that competitive spirit and attitude that Michael Jordan had. And instead, you have Kevin Durant saying that it would be best for him to wait. And I hate to say it, but there is just no way Michael Jordan would do that. And here's the other thing. I'm not usually, you know, a nostalgic guy. I'm not usually the guy who says everything from when I was growing up and from when I was little was better compared to the way everything is now. People will say that the MLB, NBA, NFL, legit everything was better back then, and it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there. The players, the quality of the game, according to those kinds of people, everything were just better then. And to be honest with you, I don't do that. I'm not someone that gets defensive about my era of sports and things that I've experienced. I'm not saying they have to be better, and keep in mind, I didn't even experience these Jordan Bull teams. I'm just going by everything that I've seen. But in this case, I do think the way NBA players used to be wired, specifically the way great players used to be wired, like Michael Jordan, are very different from the way they're wired today, where they're thinking about things like load management. Yes, let me say that again. Load management. Good luck telling Michael Jordan he can't play because of load management. Also, how many times today are they thinking about what exactly could I do to get a ring? How do I chase a ring? But here's the catch. I don't want the burden all on me, so I got to find a way to win one with the least resistance. So what all these players today are doing are asking themselves that question. How exactly could I win a ring with the least amount of effort? And guys who are maybe not 100%, but definitely healthy enough to play, and I mean stars, like Kevin Durant, and you have him saying, you know what I think? You know what? I think I'm better off waiting and sitting this one out. It's not the way Michael Jordan did it, and it's not the way the NBA's best players used to act. And so I see this Kevin Durant story, and it is currently the biggest story in the NBA today. And the Nets' odds to win the NBA championship just went way down. And I just think, wow, I'm disappointed in Kevin Durant. I am shocked he would not want to competitively test himself against other great players, and that he wouldn't want the challenge of trying to come back from this and win a series or two and try to shock the world and win a championship. And more importantly, embrace the opportunity to show people that now he is not a member of the Golden State Warriors without a true number two in Kyrie Irving, and he would potentially have the opportunity to show the world that he is still a dominant player that can do it mostly by himself, which is something he hasn't really been able to do in his career yet. You would think also that with Kevin Durant's attitude, with the burner accounts, and the fact that he was so sensitive to the idea that he got he gets crushed by the media, and rightfully so, for the if you can't beat him, join him attitude. The best way to remove that burden, in my opinion, would be to win a championship, especially in this setting, after not playing in a basketball game for a year, and with your team not playing basketball along with the rest of the league, of course, for the past 3 or so months. And so the question I have for you guys is, do you guys think Kevin Durant deserves the criticism I'm giving him right now? Because I think this is the anti-Michael Jordan move. And this is not, to me, what I would expect or what I would hope for from one of the best players and faces of the NBA, and how I would want them to go about their business. Even if they can play, then play. Even if you're not 100%. He's not on crutches, so I just don't really understand why he wouldn't be able to play. And once again, I'm not always about the Michael Jordan did anything to win, so shouldn't you attitude too much when comparing every player in every era, when you compare players in this era to back then. But to be honest with you guys, I actually think this is a pretty good example of when you could compare Michael Jordan to a player in today's game. Kevin Durant, I'm not saying he's on the same level as Michael Jordan, but we're all agreeing he's one of the 2 or 3 best players in the NBA today when he's healthy. There's no doubt about it. And he is definitely a guy that's been in that range consistently throughout his career, and the media is always in his face. The media always cares what he has to say, and I just think this is an appropriate comparison when you look at the fact, okay, Michael Jordan, when you're comparing him to Kevin Durant, there's just no way he would have sat out in this situation.